Good morning. It's December 6th. We're here for our regular scheduled commissioner meeting. We have two commissioners in the room. We have our administrator and the clerk of the board. So at this time, we'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please rise and join in the pledge. All right. Well, we are expecting Commissioner Mullen to be here. He'll maybe arrive a few minutes late, but we'll go ahead and get started.
I saw Mr. Commissioner Mullen outside the courthouse about 5 minutes ago, so I'm sure he'll be here momentarily.
We'll pause for a few minutes then and take a 5-minute recess until Commissioner Mullen shows up.
It's fine with me. It seems like a nice courtesy.
Okay, it is 9:06. We have come back from recess. We have a full slate of commissioners, and we'll proceed with the meeting. We have the approval of meeting minutes from September 25th, November 15th, November 22nd, and November 29th. Is there any revisions, corrections, or additions? No. Okay. Approval of vouchers, I believe we have one.
Yes, move for approval of fund expenditures in a total amount of $1,018,678.03 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Takes us down to public comment. Is there anybody in the room for public comment? I believe we have one caller.
Yes. Hello, caller, you have 3 minutes.
Hello?
Hello, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, okay, I can barely hear you, but this is Lawanda Hatch. I'm calling in, pretty much in response to what the assessor had said a few weeks ago. When we elect those that we elect, we expect them to represent us. I know that the formulas for figuring property taxes is done through the WAC. And we hope that when we elect Republicans, they will not only push back on some of these WACs that are unconstitutional, but that they will also inform the public on how they can push back. I know during the COVID, we were, thousands of people called in to speak at the health board to keep them from creating a regulation forcing children to get vaccines, the COVID vaccine or shot. And so that's what we expect when we elect conservative Republicans. We are a republic, and we believe we need to be represented. The Constitution is the law of the land. When each one of those that are elected swear to solemnly swear that they will support not only the U.S. Constitution but also the state Constitution, that is the law. We have statutes, we have regulatory regulations and ordinances as well, but the most important thing are the constitutions. And I just wonder what people what they think that looks like. And it means that you're going to push back. It means sometimes that you ignore those things. I wish our assessor would do more instead of reassessing everybody's property every year, take the time to get more permits to be expedited. That is what my wish is. I can tell you in Seattle, he was saying that, well, we're in par with the rest of the state. Well, the median income in King County is $106,326. The working poor in King County is $72,000 a year for a family of 4. The median income in Franklin County is $72,452, yet our rent is as high, our medical bills are as high, our energy, our food, and now our property taxes. So we are pretty much a community of working poor if you look at the census numbers. So I'm just hoping that we can get our assessor to do more to represent the people that actually elected them and who actually pay them, and that he starts representing us to the government of Washington State instead of representing the government of Washington State to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another caller?
No.
Oh, okay. Is there anybody in the room that would like to come forward for public comment? And we have no more callers?
Welcome. To join a conference now, please.
We are changing phone lines.
Please enter the attendee access code followed by pound.
Can we silence that and continue?
The meeting access code you entered is invalid. Please re-enter the meeting access code. Welcome. To join a conference now, please enter the meeting access code you entered is invalid. Please re-enter. Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please consult your direct.
Can we mute that so we can continue? All right, we're going to move on. We're down to the consent agenda. There are 22 items on the consent agenda today. So I look for a motion to approve or to discuss, pull and discuss.
Mr. Chairman, I move we remove item 18 from the consent agenda for separate discussion.
Commissioner Mullen?
So you just looking for a second, or?
No, he's pulling that, but I'm looking for a motion to approve 1 through 17 and then 19 through 22. With 18 being pulled for
Yeah.
separate discussion and
I'll
consideration.
second that with discussion on 18.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second for consent items 1 through 17, 19 through 22. With no further discussion on those items, all in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Commissioner Mullen seconded my motion to amend the agenda, which was to remove item 18. If that's incorrect, then, but I didn't hear a motion for the consent. I heard a second.
So are we removing it, or do you want discussion on it?
I made a motion to remove item 18 for separate discussion, and I believe you seconded.
Yes.
And I made a motion, or Commissioner Mullen recognized the motion for the approval of 1 through 17, 19 through 22, and he seconded it. So is there any discussion on those items? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So
That
thank you,
takes us
Mr.
to
Chairman,
item
for approving my
18
motion.
For second, for discussion. Go ahead, Commissioner Peck, on item 18.
Item 18 is the Consor study extension. Has been referred to tangentially by a couple of people over the last week. This contract has been going for several months, and I realize that this extension doesn't have any additional costs associated with it, nor frankly should it. The work is not being done in the time that it was originally intended, and to my knowledge, the scope of the work has not changed, nor have there been any changes in the contract, because they would have to have come to this board. So I'd like, for the benefit of all of our employees, to hear an explanation from anyone who has one as to why the study hasn't been completed, because clearly it has hampered our budget work, and what the purpose of the extension is. Specifically, has there been a change in scope of the work? Has there been any change to the contract? Why the delay? We've been waiting a long time for this important information. Thank you.
Permission to speak, Chair?
Chair recognizes Mr. Gonzalez.
Yeah, the bulk of the study is complete. Really, it just gives the opportunity for the new commissioner to weigh in. Is at zero fiscal impact. I think there's been a bit of a false narrative, like in terms of the salary portion. You know, the bulk of that is complete. So the key personnel have been provided to each elected official and department head that was requested and identified. So Carrie Locke has expanded the scope in some perspectives. So about 90% of it's complete. I would argue against that. It's hampered the budget discussion. You know, that we've been in a fiscally unsound place, regardless of if we knew who was identified as jobs that were at risk. Or I think the thing we discovered is we have much more parity in terms of what we're paying people than we actually thought. So I kind of dispel that notion that, and here's the thing, every one of the commissioners has received every element of the study as we've gone along. It's not as if we've withheld the information. So every elected official has it, every department head. So I've been very transparent in that piece. So zero fiscal impact. So it was really just an overture from Consor, knowing that we were getting a new commissioner to have that person weigh in. So
Mr. Gonzalez, forgive my lapse of memory here. Carrie Locke is who?
is Carrie, I believe she was going to be here. So she is agent of Consor helping us with the salary study portion. So we expanded the scope of that. So basically what happened was...
That's good, thank you. The question was, who is she? You said that she expanded the scope. Again, forgive my lapse in memory, but did that expansion of the scope of the contract come to the board, or was that something you decided working with her?
Actually, I decided it with the Strategic Growth Committee. So the elected officials asked me to expand the scope, and so we did.
So you changed the scope of the contract, but it didn't come back to the board?
No, that would not necessarily the case. So we asked for input from the Strategic Growth Committee. We made a decision. We had budget money that was still available from a previous study, and we made that decision.
I'm not questioning the merit of the decision.
A service contract does not need to go in front of the board on all occasions, and you know that, Commissioner Peck. So I know what you're trying to do here. You're essentially trying to spin something like I went outside the board's authority, but that was not the case.
The gentleman is out of order. The personal attacks are unwarranted. I have a point to make.
Make your point, Commissioner Peck.
The value of the Consor contract is approximately more than $25,000.
Yes, it's around 100,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Requires board approval.
And that got board approval. Yes,
Right.
it did.
And changes to the scope of a contract of that amount would also require board approval. So, thank you for that.
She was hired
I
as
think-
a separate contractor, is what I'm saying, and you know that.
Again, we can dispel with the personal attacks and
It's not a
innuendos.
personal attack, it's a fact.
Fact of the matter is, it didn't come back here.
It didn't need to. And I've already had this discussion with Daniel.
The purpose for my inquiry is to make sure that our employees who are directly impacted by this and who have been waiting for a better part of a year to see the outcome have an understanding of what the purpose is. The Strategic Growth Committee is a small group of people. I've talked to several employees who have been curious as to why it's taking so long. We can respectfully disagree on the degree to which it has impacted our budget discussions. I think it's been a significant factor. And thank you for explaining that the purpose for the delay is so that the new commissioner, whomever that is, will have an opportunity to weigh in and give their, I'm sure, very experienced position on the subject. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve item 18.
Move for approval of consent agenda item number 18, resolution 2023-339 as presented.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second for agenda item 18, resolution 2023-339. Without further discussion, I'll...
Discussion?
Go ahead, Commissioner Peck.
I'll be voting no on the measure. Mr. Gonzalez and I can respectfully disagree on the process and whether or not proper authorities were in place to make this extension. I don't believe that waiting for the new commissioner to come in and weigh in on this is sufficient value for us and for our employees to continue to have to wait for this important study. So Thank you. That's all my comments.
So we have a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-339. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Takes us down to regular business items. We have Resolution 2023-343, public hearing, amend to the Transportation Improvement Plan, 2024 through 2029. Mr. Erdman. And at this point in time, I'll open the public hearing.
Before the board is, in addition to our transportation improvement plan, this is fairly routine. We submitted our 6-year transportation plan on June 20th. We received funding subsequent to that for 2 other types of projects, one for bridge and one for safety improvement. And this is to amend the STIP to reflect that.
Questions?
Mr. Erdman, can you provide any more clarity for the benefit of the public as to why this change was necessary?
Well, we applied for funding for bridge replacement and for safety improvement projects, and that money was awarded to us subsequent after we had already brought in our 6-year transportation improvement plan. And as I said, this is a routine operation. We make changes to the STIP throughout its life. We were fortunate when we received some funding that at the time we did the original STIP, we couldn't put that forth. We now have received the funding to replace Glenwood Bridge and to make some safety improvements on Columbia River Road, East Vineyard, Eltopia West, R170, Self Landing. We've got some guardrail improvements on Sage Hill, Blanton, and the PK.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Erdman, is this grant money that we applied for and received?
Yes.
And I've had discussion with another department head, and he says there's a special fund that we pull out of for grant money. Isn't that out of your your fund, Public Works Fund?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we manage, the grants that Public Works gets are managed internally by Public Works. So this is all part of our, capital improvement budget. So yeah, they're specific to our department.
I guess my question is, the road shift, those funds are used to match our
Yes.
percentage of these,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
And that limits our capacity to do these kinds of things.
Right. So the more we shift, the less we can do to match those
Correct.
grant money funds.
That's
That was
correct.
my whole point. Okay. Thank you. Is there any other further discussion?
Has there been times when we do not have the money for matching funds?
Not in the 9 years that I've been the county engineer. I don't recall that we've ever not, but we're very careful about how we program. We try to make sure that, that regardless of whether we get a shift or not, that the stuff that we do put on our transportation improvement plan that we're going to be able to do in the coming year. That being said, it can inhibit what we're going to look to do in the next year. If we don't feel like there's many to go, we won't pursue grants.
I see.
So, and there is possibility if we aren't able to meet that obligation. We try real hard to do it because then if we spend money on the grant towards the project and we can't deliver the project, then we're obligated to pay that money back. So we're very cautious. And
I guess a better way to word the question is, are there grants out there that you're not able to go after because of lack of funding?
well, there's stuff I won't go after because, I don't feel like we're going to have the capacity to do it with what funding's available. It takes, there's two sides to this equation is A, having the money up front to cover our part of the grant, the matching funds. The other part of it is that oftentimes to manage these capital projects, we need more people to do that. I need more engineers. I need more program managers. We purposely keep ourselves pretty, as small as we possibly can to accomplish the work we have. And, I'll be honest, we anticipate that we're generally going to not have full funding. And we keep that in mind when we pursue grants. So where it will impact us is in us pursuing future grants. And we evaluate that one at a time. It's like, well, have we got the money to do this or don't we?
Thank you.
So, Mr. Erdman, I realize it's a good deal more complex than you just laid out, but I think that's sort of a fair summary. Really, your ability to do projects is constrained by money and manpower.
Yes.
And even though we might get grants from the County Road Administration Board, State DOT, or anyone else for a highway project, we have to match those typically at least 10%. Sometimes it's federal money and goes through the state as well. So having the money to match those is one limiting factor. The other is staff. So the question with that understanding is, for the coming 2024 and the existing 6-year STIP, do you feel constrained by either of those or both?
That's a hard question.
Well, are there?
I don't think we're.
Well, let me ask it in a more direct way. Are there any projects that you see on the horizon for which you have the money but not the staff, or ones that you have the staff but not the money?
No, I think we're fairly balanced in that regard for what we've committed to. Where it will affect us is in looking at future grants. We'll have to weigh carefully, do we have the money to expand staff or to cover the county's match to go after future grants? And we know there's opportunities out there. We're aggressive. We like to have those opportunities, but there's only a certain amount of capacity that we can handle under current staffing and under our current budget.
All right. Is it fair to also say that there's a balancing act of sorts between local projects that we fund ourselves and retaining enough grant money for matches when outside dollars become
absolutely.
available?
They're in direct conflict with each other.
Right, okay. You know that, I know that, but I think it's beneficial for the public's understanding and
I
for our
agree.
employees to understand it when we talk about changing the transportation improvement plan, we talk about changes to budgets, all these different things are interrelated. And while there's a lot of money on the table sometimes for projects, we have to have the funds in Public Works to match those.
Correct.
Which speaks to the issue of road shifts. Okay, thanks.
If there are no more questions from the commissioners, this is a public hearing, so is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this? Anybody on the phone? I see nobody coming forward, so at this time I'll close the public hearing on Resolution 2023-343, Amendment to the Transportation Improvement Plan, and entertain a motion.
Move for approval of Resolution 2023-343 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-343. Is there any further comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Takes us down to Ordinance 2023-009, Public Hearing on Amendment to the Speed Limit Ordinance, presented by Mr. Erdman again. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing and proceed, Mr. Erdman.
Okay. This specifically addresses Burns Road from milepost 2.29 to milepost 3.48. In cooperation with the city, they lowered the city's portion to 35 miles an hour. We did our own study, and along with looking at their study, determined that it was in the best interest in the character, since this is it is outside the city limits, but it is inside the urban growth boundary and is largely residential, that this suits the character of the neighborhood, and for safety reasons, that having a unified 35 miles an hour through that area is in the best interest.
At the pace of
Hopefully I
growth,
summed that up well. I'm not sure that I did, but
at the pace of growth, I'd have to agree.
Yep.
So, Is there any comments from the commissioners, questions?
Can you refresh my memory? What is the current posted speed there? Is it 45?
It is 50 miles an hour currently.
50 currently.
Yeah, so that's a 15 mile per hour differential.
Does that road meet the state, and I forget the acronym you told me before, but anyway, the highway standards? for
The
that
highway
speed?
standards, probably not, well, I lied.
Doesn't
Let me couch
ADT
that.
play into that calculus?
What's that now?
Does ADT, average daily traffic?
Yes, it does.
And hasn't ADT gone up exponentially?
Oh, absolutely.
And since we haven't evaluated it lately, I'm guessing that it maybe doesn't
Yes.
meet the state standards.
Right, and we've noted that prior in other development that, that this was taking Burns Road to a level that was beyond what it was designed for originally.
Which is why the county has levied road improvement fees on those developments to have the funding to make those road improvements. I'm focused right now on the issue at hand, which is the speed limit, and not being a highway engineer, but just another road user. It seems to me that given the ADT change and the development on both sides, including those apartments, that if it doesn't, or if it does meet state standards today, probably as soon as those apartments are done, it won't.
Right,
So I think this is an inevitable change. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Okay, thank you.
All right. There's no further questions or discussions with the commissioners. This is a public hearing, so is there anybody from the public that would like to come forward and comment on this? Seeing nobody coming forward, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move to approve ordinance 2023-009 as presented in the matter of amending the speed limit ordinance on Burns Road.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second for ordinance 2023-009. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Takes us down to resolution 2023-344, assessment of the Bi-County Superior Court relationship, presented by Mr. Connor.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Thank you. So before you today is a resolution where we are asking the board to commission a study on our current Bi-County Superior Court relationship. Just to give you some background, this is obviously a conversation that's more or less been happening in the back halls for several years. Recently, that discussion kind of evolved into a little bit more of organization. We had a meeting. The invitation for that meeting a few weeks ago really started small, and the individual participants expanded that. And one of those participants recommended that we bring some legislators in to kind of give us some insight on the process if we were to undertake something like this. So it was more or less organic, and I want to make sure that that's clarified, because I know there's been some comments over the last couple of weeks about people being sad they weren't invited, and so I just want to kind of clarify how that happened. So this resolution before you essentially is to commission the assessment itself, and I'm going to hand you guys a letter of support. The original one is the clerk.
Thanks.
So that letter of support for this is signed by the Franklin County Superior Court Clerk, the Franklin County Prosecutor's Representative, and the Sheriff, which is, those three are obviously the elected officials within Franklin County that have the most criminal justice interaction. Certainly, there's many other offices and departments that, play some role in the criminal justice process. And if you'll notice, Mr. Ziegler's signature is not on there, and I think he wanted the opportunity to explain why that is. So I'll let him do that. So the purpose of the resolution, obviously this is a bit unorthodox for us in Franklin County, but we're more or less wanting to formalize this. We also want it to originate in the proper authority, which is the legislative body. of the county. So the benefits of this is it defines our actual scope of work. It ensures the assessment is going to be objective and transparent. And it requires a report back to the commissioners with a firm timeline. So, and then, if needed, it will also assist in obtaining necessary information from all parties as we begin to undertake the analysis. So, if you gentlemen choose to approve this, I want to make sure that you understand this study will not just examine the cost of service, but also the quality of service in Franklin County. Now, keep in mind, when we talk about things like quality, that would be more of a subjective, feelings-based conclusion that we'll be getting from people, but we can still report that in an objective way. So I want to be clear about that. And also today, we've got Mr. Killian, and I think Stovern is here as well. So if you had any question, and the sheriff, obviously. So if you had any questions specifically for them, they are all prepared to answer those. My role in this is essentially to make this request on behalf of those offices and then ensure that this study goes forward in the proper manner if you choose to approve this resolution. So, any questions for me?
Just gave your letter a quick read. It says there's a resolution attached.
It is the resolution before you, gentlemen.
Okay, so there's nothing separate with this letter?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Sometimes we'll have something that goes into the read-aheads that is a week or two previous, and we'll get an update at the meeting, so.
I see.
Okay, thanks. The folks who were in attendance at the initial meeting, were they Franklin County people exclusive? Presumably we had some court system people from both counties?
It was not Franklin County exclusive. There was primarily Franklin County representatives there, City of Pasco representatives, City of Connell. The legislators, obviously, most of them cover both counties. We had the Benton County Superior Court clerk in attendance as well. But that invitation was not necessarily defined by the organizer of the event. It was a group that said, let's have this meeting and then invite the people that you want to invite.
Yeah, I'm not, my inquiries aren't directed at who got invited and why. My inquiry is directed at who was there. And so from the Franklin County, Benton County perspective, we had at least a couple of state legislators, I believe. Did you have anybody from the Superior Court from Benton County?
No.
Okay.
Other than the elected clerk herself.
Okay.
She was in attendance.
All right, she was, okay. And any other Benton County officials?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, I guess my question would be is, why do you want to split? What issues are you facing? And
That's a great question, because it tells me that our true motive here is not clear. I am not advocating for a split. I'm advocating for an analysis. So whether we split or not is something that the state legislator will decide ultimately, but they're going to weigh heavy on the local legislative authority's opinion. And what we want to do here is undertake an analysis, an in-depth objective analysis on whether we should or not, whether that is in the best interest of the citizens of Franklin County. I'm not going to stand here today and tell you that it is, because I don't know. We have not undertaken this analysis yet. That's what we're asking to do, and the purpose of having this resolution is to formalize that is our intent, and it essentially creates that guardrail that we can keep politics out of this, we can keep people's opinions out of this, and we can actually conduct an analysis that then reports back to you. So that is the purpose here. I am not standing here today advocating the split in any way.
what has led to this wanting of an analysis?
Because people keep talking about it. And this is probably the best way to provide the actual decision makers with the information to make an informed decision so we can put this matter to bed. One way or the other, we can stop talking about it. It's been talked about for decades, and it's going to keep getting talked about, and it could potentially continue to strain relationships unless we actually do an analysis that gets to the facts, and then decisions are made, and we move forward based on those decisions. That's my opinion of why we're here today.
All right, thank you.
I believe Mr. Stover wants to say something.
Before you step down, Mr. Connor, if I might, seems just a little curious to me, and I don't want to suggest that there's any motives attached to this one way or the other, but a proposal to discuss splitting a longstanding state-established bi-county superior court system, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone standing before us saying we need to study this, say, from the clerk's office or from the prosecutor's office or from one of the judges. But somebody from the sheriff's office, I wouldn't necessarily have expected. Can you kind of give me some insight as to where you fit in this and why you're apparently the spokesperson for this request?
Well, I can tell you
And I'm not saying it is wrong. I'm just saying it's a little different than I would have expected.
and I understand
Let me
that.
answer that question.
And my sheriff is going to answer that for you.
Well, that's good. Thank you.
I assigned the commander to try to put it together. I made the requests of my legislators and senators. I made the requests of who I wanted in attendance so we could talk about it. Decide how is it that you put a House bill up, if this was going to happen, and what needs to happen if you're going to put a House bill up on the floor at the state capitol. That was the purpose of the meeting. To follow up on a couple other questions that you asked, you might be surprised when you query the judicial branch, Benton County, and other entities that are interested in exploring to see what is in the best interest of Franklin County Superior Court and the people of Franklin County. So hopefully that maybe helps a little bit. No one's saying separate anything or those type of things. What's being said is explore it. Let's look and see what it takes legally to do that. Is it something that's desired from the public safety sector, i.e. the sheriff, law enforcement, so on and so on, and the judicial branch? And how do we do that and explore that to provide a quality input back to this board to make a decision if they want to have input. So that's all that's taking place. No one's wanting to kick judges out of the Franklin County Courthouse. But you'll also find, if you research history, it's not Franklin County that started this argument and wanted to seek questions. I think I know of 2 times where the legislative authorities of Benton County have tried to separate the courts. And in fact, the reason it fell on dead ears, for a lack of better words, is because the attorneys in the Tri-Cities didn't want it to occur. So you have to evaluate all the different forces, if you will, in order to make a sound decision. What's the problem? What isn't the problem? So on and so on, in order to have a good comprehensive response to the question, and is it needed or is it not? I don't even think the OPD lawyer, Larry Ziegler's against that. I think I remember him saying in the meeting that certainly let's explore it, but let's not drop the hammer. And no one's asking anybody to drop the hammer.
So, Sheriff, I think your recollection of the history of this topic and mine are very similar, including previous proposed legislation in Olympia that didn't go anywhere. And like you, I am an advocate of asking questions, and sometimes the tougher questions are the most important ones. But I'll be happy to hear Mr. Stovern now.
Mr. Stover, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just some background. I went and looked at all the other joint judicial districts for Superior Court in Washington State, the counties that participate, and their population levels. We are by far the largest bi-county or tri-county grouping. There are 15 counties that are smaller than us by population, which all have their own individual superior courts. With the exception of Benton County, because they're a member of our joint, we are the largest county participating in a joint superior court. The next largest county is Stevens County, which participates with Ferry and Pend Oreille, and Stevens County population is 48,000. I think it is a fair assessment to say that Stevens County is doing their much smaller neighbors a favor by allowing them to join together, just to have the critical mass to allow them to have 3 total judges. But Franklin County's population is larger than Stevens, Ferry, and Pend Oreille put together. We are an outlier in this regard. There are no other large bi-county or tri-county judicial districts. I know there used to be a larger one, and they made the decision to split. I don't know that they were larger than us, but they would have been more comparable in size to us. The majority of bi- or tri-county judicial districts are of very, very small counties that are banding together to be able to field one superior court judge. All of our peer counties, in terms of population, have their own superior courts.
Questions for Mr. Stover?
I think it's expected that the smaller counties, for fiscal reasons, join together, and their motives for doing that are pretty clear and I think well-founded. Are there perhaps other reasons why a joint court is beneficial even for a larger county, or do you believe that fiscal issues are really the only basis by which we ought to do that?
I'm sure there are advantages. Obviously, if we split, Franklin County would have most likely 3 judges rather than the 7 that we in theory have access to now. So if there were a day where we need 4 judges in the building, or if that were more convenient for judicial economy, we can do that now, and we wouldn't be able to do that later. On the other side of that coin, there are times when, say, the whole panel of judges could be conflicted off because of, maybe a judge is a victim of a crime or something who's actively on the panel. And then, normally you would go to a neighbor county and say, hey, can you handle this? In the prosecutor's office where I work, we handle conflicts for Benton County all the time. And keep in mind, it's not about not cooperating with our neighbors. We're all friends and often relatives with our Benton County neighbors. We're not trying to separate anything. This is my pass to get through the Benton County security, because when they have a conflict, they can call me, and they do. Eric Eisinger or someone from his office will talk to Mr. Sant. He'll assign someone. I will go over there and handle one of their cases on conflict. If we had a joint prosecutor's office, which we can't, but if we did, we would have to call someone from Yakima or Grant County or Walla Walla. And that is, in essence, what happens sometimes with the judges. I don't think that's the primary reason why you should make the decision or ask the state legislature to make the decision. But I do think sometimes change of venue issues, you got to go farther, because in essence, we've made Benton and Franklin the same venue. If we need visiting judges, we have to go farther. I would anticipate, even if we did split, that there would be cooperation continued between the counties, but we are an outlier in the sense that we're so large and we're still operating across county lines instead of having our own.
Yeah, thank you. I just note that, and I meant to say this earlier and didn't, but this letter is helpful in that it has your signature on behalf of the county prosecutor, Mr. Sant, who's off serving with the Army, and Mr. Killian, the clerk, and the sheriff. And now this is very helpful in letting us know that you're all in the same mind, or of the same mind, with respect to analyzing the question. And just to be clear, not necessarily advocating a split, but advocating making decisions from a point of information, not just something else.
That's very true. If we were to do an analysis, and it would be very expensive to split, it is very conceivable that we would then come back and ask you not to adopt that.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's about timely access to justice and cost. And if it pans out that the results of a study like this say that we can provide better access to justice for our citizens and do it at the same or less cost, then I think probably be a great thing to do. And since I won't be here when that decision comes up, I'll get my thoughts in now. Thanks.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, I can definitely see the need for Stevenson Ferry and Pend Oreille County, because they are a very vast area with limited population. On the other hand, we sit here with our neighbor only separated by the river, and the mass population is pretty centralized. I am in favor of taking a look at it and doing the analysis, because in the end, we have to do what's best for our citizens. So I will leave it with that, but it's going to come down to what is best for our citizens and what the costs are. Thank you.
And I concur with Commissioner Mullen.
Thank you.
Chair, permission to speak.
Gonzalez.
I was looking over the agenda last night and reading the resolution. The one thing I feel is missing is the involvement in this committee of the executive branch and the auditor's office. If you're going to stick to this timeline of October 2nd, and Commander Connor, there's no indication whether you're going to report to us monthly or quarterly just on October 2nd. Can you flesh out a little bit of your timeline and perhaps why the executive branch isn't involved, or the auditor's office?
Well, so second to the last paragraph, be it further resolved, the committee, with the assistance of all interested parties, shall conduct an objective assessment. I believe that does adequately cover the auditor's office. The auditor's office obviously has a role with the financial portion of this. However, their role is limited to just the financial and not necessarily the quality side of it that we're looking at. And so, we wanted that originating committee to be those affected by both sides of this coin. That doesn't mean that we intend to exclude the auditor. They're very much, in fact, Mr. Anderson has already been providing a lot of information. We have a great working relationship with the auditor's office and being able to obtain the financial data on those types of things. So that's certainly not the intent to exclude them in any way. They're obviously an integral part of the financial dealings of the county, and we fully intend to include them in that. Anytime you have groupthink, you've got to worry about making your group too big, and it'll just bog down the process. So that line has to go somewhere. Maybe I was incorrect in where I put the line, but I certainly feel like you can usually get more done if you keep that group small. So,
Would you be amenable to adding the county administrator and Tim Anderson to that?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think in whatever way we need to memorialize that, we can, but I'm not going to sit here and tell the board how that should be defined. This is merely a recommendation on, the elected offices that we've been speaking with and their available resources to be on this committee to do this work. So, if others want to join in, I just don't want to see it bog down the timeline of things, because we've got to accommodate more people's schedules, and sometimes they're at a meeting, sometimes they're not, and then we have to play catch up and all those other factors that go into when you have large groups making decisions. So It's completely up to you guys.
Yes, I would concur that our administrator would be involved in this and the auditor's office, whether it be Tim or who is the numbers man. And we're dealing with him every day here on this budget.
Yep.
And I'd also like to add that, there's been numbers thrown out there that we're sending $6 million to Benton County, and I went through and did my own analysis, and we're actually, for just Superior Court, $1,045,000 is what we put in last year. If you want to include juvenile justice, which was a total of $3,340,000, that gets us up over $4 million. But the number was thrown out that we're north of $6 million. We're not there, and Superior Court is not even nowhere close to $6 million. This year, as of the end of last month, we're $3,422,000, with December to be included. So we are, it's not north of $6 million. Just want to be clear on that.
So Commissioner, I'm the one that made that comment.
Well, I'm glad
And
you
if
brought
you-
yourself forward, Sheriff, because you were the one that made that comment. I didn't want to single you out.
And if you bring in all the grants, all the budgets, all the line items, it is north of 6 million. You're just taking a snippet. You have to look at
Our budget
all
book,
the incomes.
Our budget book, Sheriff. These are the taxpayers' money right now.
I look at your budget book all the time, Commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand the point you're trying to get to. But ultimately, in the end, you start looking at grant money that's sent from county taxpayers to Benton County and so on. It's well north of 6 million. And again, that's where a financial analysis piece like Mr. Gonzalez is suggesting it is prudent to do that.
Yes.
But the financial piece doesn't make the decision of what the system looks like or how it's ran. That has to be left up to law enforcement and OPD and all the different people that should be signing that to say, let's take a look and let's take a deep dive. And at no point is anybody saying we're going to cut anybody out of the process, because if you're going to do a deep dive on a problem, then you're going to do a strong analysis, both financial, all the different issues in order to present those facts to our legislators so that they have a good understanding when it goes up on both sides of the river. And ultimately, in the end, this, if it goes, it has to go in the form of a House bill. And there's lots of people that can put a House bill up to Olympia, to include me. As a citizen, as the sheriff, all those type of things. So
And it's
before
just a
we
bill.
start fighting over numbers,
And it's just a bill until they pass it, Sheriff.
that's right. It's a bill until all the legislators and senators pass it.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
If I may, Commissioners?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff.
And I guess this is your last meeting, Commissioner Peck, so I didn't get an opportunity to speak earlier, but we
Well, I'm not sure we know that yet, but
wanted to bring that up. I think
Thank
maybe in
you.
the past life, we might have quarreled more, me being former Army enlisted and you being an officer in the Air Force. I mean, those aren't the type of folks that typically get along, but we certainly commend your years of service, your
Thank you.
country, and the county. So I wasn't asked to look at this resolution, but just sort of looking at it during this meeting, the only sort of issue that I would have with it, and by the way, just sort of as an aside, I commend the sheriff for agreeing to be bound by a resolution of the county commissioners. I didn't, normally I don't think he would have agreed to that, but all joking aside, there is a point there in that joke, is that these are elected officials, and I don't know that a resolution of the county commissioners could bind them. However, it does say that with the assistance of interested parties, which implies that maybe the elected officials could opt out if they're not interested in participating in the study. So for that reason, I think it's fine as drafted. But again, that would be my concern, would be the commissioners, the legislative body, and in certain respects, the plural executive body of the county simply wouldn't have the authority to tell an elected official to participate in a study of this nature. However, it sounds like there is a lot of interest in this, and certainly we would want to make sure that all the stakeholders are involved. And so I commend the sheriff's office in terms of identifying those stakeholders, including the auditor, to the extent they wish to participate in this, and receiving their input. So thank you.
Thank you.
So if I may, Mr. Briggs obviously brought up a great point, and that was primarily the reason why you also received a letter of support from those independently elected officials. We are undertaking what may be considered uncharted territory in Franklin County, which is cooperation. That's what this is all about. It's an exercise in cooperation with multiple elected officials that are willing to be bound by a resolution, and they've signed a letter of support indicating so. So, just to provide that additional clarification.
I would like to hear from Mr. Ziegler.
It wasn't me.
I don't want you to read anything into the fact that I didn't sign. I didn't sign because I work for you. I'm not elected. I work at your pleasure. If you sign off on a resolution, I'm more than willing to participate. With the understanding that all we're talking about here right now is something that's exploratory. From OPD standpoint, looking at the entire justice system in the state and in the county, when Mr. Peck talks about access to justice, my immediate question is who defines access and who defines justice? Mm-hmm. The West Side does. And we just went through a budgetary cycle from hell. And I was, 7 or 8 or 9 items on this consent agenda this morning, where I had to come to you again with hat in hand because of all these unexpected financial burdens. So all I'm saying right now is that I did attend the meeting, I listened, I heard a lot of numbers bandied around, millions of dollars here, millions of dollars there. I don't think anybody knows what they're talking about right now really in terms of what would this thing cost. And until you know, A, how fast is the county going to grow? What's the revenue stream going to be from that? Does the county have assets right now that aren't producing a nickel that they can offload and start getting ready for that? I can almost guarantee you, if we put this through in whatever time frame you vote to do it, the first thing you're going to see is a lot of unanticipated expenses, because that's the nature of the judicial critter. And I'm living proof. It all flowed downhill. It's that simple. And the way Olympia looks at you, that's the way it is. They'll tell us how we're going to do it. And they may listen to us. They may let us do a little lip service now and again, but it's always, we have to shell out the money. And that's what happened in this last budget cycle. And I think you really need to keep that in mind as we go into this. If we go into it, all we're doing is exploring. No commitments from anybody. Let's take a long, hard look at where we want to get to or think we want to get to, and then start the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Ziegler, appreciate your comments. This letter of support does say that with the board's concurrence, so much as I appreciate your deference to the board, it was deferential in its wording. My comment was timely access to justice. Certainly you would know better than I do how to go about trying to define justice, but we both agree that it's not an easy thing to really define. For me, the issue is about timeliness, and I think I said timely and equal or lesser cost. And I brought up the timely part specifically because I've been told over the years that a combined court gives you more depth in judges and makes a more flexible arrangement where you can have an entire day maybe Monday dedicated to a docket just for civil matters, and that there were efficiencies in that process that improve timeliness of access to the courts or justice. So that was really the emphasis, and not splitting hairs, but I do see a difference between timely access, whatever we define justice. The timeliness piece has been troublesome, especially through COVID, which I know is an outlier. But thank you for your comments.
I see Judge Burrows is here. Would you be interested in giving an opinion?
And Judge Brown. We got lots of judges.
First of all, thank you, Commissioner Mullen, for asking me to speak. A couple things just come to mind. I will agree with the sheriff to the extent that this has been going on for decades. The first study was by the lawyer D.O. Reddick back in 2002, I think. Had that study with respect to the potential splitting of the judiciary. I take no position on this resolution. I did read the resolution, and as long as the stakeholders have an opportunity to provide the information necessary for the analysis, I think it's a worthwhile opportunity to look at it. My personal opinion, it has been a long and daunting, since I've been a judicial officer, of discussion through the halls of both courthouses. So, and I know one elected official representative, tried it back in 2020, and there were some deep discussions and with respect to a former judicial officer that was carrying the torch, Judge Spanner, with respect to their opinion on how and what should occur. So I think in the time frame, Commissioner Mullen, since you asked me, I'll just say this. I think the resolution's a good opportunity to really flush out all the details and the numbers, as Commissioner Didier has indicated. What are the numbers, and what does Franklin County portion put in, and what is actually being utilized by the citizens of Franklin County? I also appreciate Sheriff Raymond's analysis. What he's alluding to is state funds with respect to mental health and drug treatment and other resources that are provided by the state and federal government that might be used in a pot of money, and who has access to that pot of money with respect to therapeutic courts and where that funding goes. And I'm also appreciate the amount of money that is spent by the Franklin County citizens on implementing the bi-county agreement with respect to payments and salaries and such. So really, Commissioner Mullen, I'm circling around your real question, and I'm doing that for a reason, because I've been asked to make a public statement on a for or against. I just think right now I agree with a number of speakers that is there a harm in doing an analysis? I don't think so. I think it will flush out all that information, and then I agree with that. Maybe there would be some, as Mr. Gonzalez said, some monthly or quarterly updates on how's it going and where's it at, and before that ultimate decision or the ultimate presentation, the way I see it, to the board, either a yay or a nay. I don't know. From the judiciary standpoint, I would expect we're the one affected. Others are all affected by this potential analysis, that we'd just be asked about the data and any information they would like us to provide. We are partners. We want to be team players. We want to get it right. That's what we're supposed to be doing as elected officials, making right decisions, not wrong decisions, in the best interest of everyone, and make sure that we can stand by our integrity. Our integrity meaning the numbers are correct, and they're not skewed one way or another. They're factual, and they're based on the evidence presented. I think all people would want that from all elected officials, and I'm here to support that. I will always, if asked, I will always respond to our partners and give the best information that I have in the most timely way. And that's about all I can say, Commissioner Mullen.
No,
I'm still circling.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So Marcus, you made comment, and I've looked for it, I'm trying to find it, that you're not excluding any of the electeds from the courthouse, correct?
Correct. Correct.
So if you're going to manage a tight group, how are you going to manage it when you've included everyone?
Well, I mean, we're obviously going to reach out. There's some people that are bound by the resolution itself, and they have offered themselves as willing to be bound by the resolution with that letter of support. So in addition to that originating committee, if you will, there are obviously going to be others that we will ask to participate, and we hope that they will participate. And we may even try and strong arm them and say we have a resolution that may compel you to participate. I don't see it getting that far, but that's one of the reasons why we want this resolution. But I don't see anybody resisting participating in this anyway. It really just comes down to, can we obligate them to or not? And you've got 3 independently electeds that are willing to obligate themselves to this. And so I think that's the difference of why there are some specifically listed and some not. But certainly, by all means, we will be asking for I mean, even in, revenue forecasting, we might even be reaching out to the assessor to look at what does that look like moving forward and funding this. And I mean, it could go, to all different corners of this courthouse and the other courthouse across the river. So we are not in any way trying to exclude any participation in this. It just comes down to who are we obligating to bring this back to the commission for an ultimate, decision on.
I would strongly encourage you to include our administrator and Tim from the auditor's office.
Absolutely.
With all the numbers. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then the one concern that I heard in the previous meetings when we discussed this was the fact that Franklin County is lacking, and we have 4 of them in the room today, and any one of them can answer the question, but the judges in Franklin County, it was mentioned by the clerk that sometimes the residents of Franklin County have to go to Benton County to get a restraining order or the other paperwork that has to be filed. What is the possibility of having a Superior Court judge here all 5 working days for the...
I will only speak to that, I guess, to a certain extent of that will most likely be a potential outcome of this analysis.
Yes, and I'm already trying to get
We
Mr.
may
Burrows,
look at
looks like you
a service improvement
wanna come
under
forward?
the current relationship.
All we're trying to do is make sure the citizens of Franklin County have the same access
Right.
as the citizens of Benton.
And I can tell you from personal experience, I have driven that person over to Benton County so that order could get signed, so they could make a safe removal from their home. And it is discouraging at times. However, I don't want to sit here and tell you that is always the case.
No.
There are always going to be those anomalies where we can't find an available judge in this county. I certainly don't want to cue this up like I'm asking the judges to defend themselves, because that is not our position at all.
It was brought to our attention. I'm just asking the question, what's the likelihood of that happening? And I was going to approach the Benton County commissioners with the same question. So,
I would say that obviously we have full faith that, the current court administration is having to schedule limited resources in the best possible way, and we're not necessarily questioning their competence in that in any way.
Exactly.
But those issues do come up. We resolve them as best as we can, but we're always looking for ways to improve our service to the citizens of Franklin County, and we will continue to do so. As long as I'm here as a civil servant, I will continue to do that, and I will ask everyone else to do the same.
Mr. Burrows is waiting to speak.
Mr. Burrows, if you'll hold on just a second. Thank you. Gentlemen, you're asking questions of the judicial branch
Yes,
of our
we are.
government. And you're beginning to put them in a spot that is going to cause problems for them.
To be clear, Sheriff, we aren't.
Okay.
A citizen is, that's a commissioner.
A citizen is, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There's nothing wrong with asking questions.
Before Judge Burrows gets up, I just would hope that we would honor the judicial system and let them take part in the process as they legally can do, and without causing a bunch of problems within the judicial system.
Thank you, Sheriff. I didn't mean to offend you, Judge.
No,
We're just-
I've got thick skin. I've been doing this a long time, so I'm good. So let me just say, Commissioners, first of all, I alluded to evidence. Evidence is a good tool to look at and verify statements that are made. I encourage you that each week there's a daily schedule. As long as I've been here, there's been a judicial officer in Franklin County. I can't recall a time, there might be a time before my time, that there was not a judicial officer in Franklin County.
Okay.
That evidence is in the daily schedule. I can just say this without responding to the allegations set forth. I'm on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have a government phone that is routinely called all day, all night. I routinely get calls on particular issues, search warrants, 72-hour holds, protection orders. Where are you, Judge Burrows? Well, I'm at X in Franklin County, or I'm at X in Benton County, or I'm having dinner with my family, and it's an emergency. The days before electronic, come see me. I'm happy to do my service as a judicial officer for signing protective orders. I can recall numerous times that judicial officers, at least from my perspective, law enforcements have come to my home all hours of night, including Franklin County sheriffs, to my house in the middle of the night for protection orders, search warrants, or other issues. I'll just say this. I appreciate the sheriff saying something about that and putting us in an awkward position. We are always available by phone, by email, by any other means that I get contacted, or any other time that I'm in the community that there happens to be an officer driving by and knows my car, who I am, and happens to flag me down and ask me to do something. I'm always available. With that said, all our judicial officers are available. I take my oath seriously, my duties seriously, and I'm concerned when people question my integrity and my duties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I just want to support what Judge Burrows was saying with a quick little example. The very first search warrant I ever had signed as a law enforcement officer was at the beer counter of a Dust Devils game, because that's where I could find the closest judge, and that was the closest flat surface we had to actually do this. It was not him, and the judge is retired now, so I can talk about that story. But he truly, is being genuine when he says, we wake judges up at all hours of the night. We pull them away from family dinners. We pull them away from vacations at times. I want to make sure that we do convey that, yes, we do have a way, and I know we drive them crazy at times, especially at 3 a.m, but they stand willing to provide that service, and I don't think they would want it any other way. So, sorry,
Thank
Judge.
you. No, not at all. So I'm the administrative presiding judge. I have been for the past 2 years. And my concern is that I haven't heard about this until today. If I had, I would have done something about it.
It was in our
and that's-
public meeting a few weeks ago.
Okay, well, thank you. But I'm here. I'm available to talk about those things.
Okay.
I would love to hear those things and concerns. It's been a busy couple years. We take domestic violence extremely seriously as a bench, and I don't want that to happen. He can be doing other things than transporting people to Benton. So I apologize that that had to happen. But I'm here to stand as a representative of the bench, to assure you, I will do all my best to ensure that never happens again. And so I've encouraged the new administrative presiding Judge Stamm and Judge Ruff, please come to these meetings more often, because I was missing some things. And I don't want to do that, and I don't want our bench to. So if they can't make it, I certainly will try. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. I didn't mean to upset or insult anybody. All I'm trying to do is make sure that we have services available in Franklin
Absolutely.
County. So
I
thank
want you to have that too.
Thank you.
You bet.
So with that, is there any other questions for Marcus? If
No.
not, I'd entertain a motion.
So in the best interest of what is fair and equitable for all of our citizens and how we spend their money, and taking a look at different alternatives, I will move to approve Resolution 2023-334 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-344, the assessment of the Bi-County Superior Court relationship. Is there any further discussion?
I'd make the observation that at some point there may be some ministerial costs associated with executing these committee meetings and the like, and my understanding is that each of the participants will cover any sort of costs out of their own budgets, that you're not looking for any fiscal notes from the county, and you've made that clear. I just wanted to state that as part of my concurrence, so thanks.
So if there's no more discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Moves us down to...
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Moves us down to discussion regarding bailiff positions. Judge Shea Brown.
Thank you. I've brought some folks with me you might recognize. So we have our court administrator, Tiffany Rung, here. I have Judge Ruff here as well, and Judge Peterson. Carly Nave is also here as well. I just want to thank you for taking your time today to let us revisit the issue I came to you with last week. Let me keep this fairly focused for your benefit and mine. There's two things converging at this time. Our union negotiations, the change of the bailiff's duties, and your budget for next year. And so our ask today, in light of, I know that Tiffany's been attending our court administrator, your budget talks these past few days that are very, very key. It's weighing heavily on you, I'm sure, and it is on us too. But our ask is that you do not, please do not defund the bailiffs, okay? I understand the ask, and if I get this wrong, just let me know, but your ask is that we change our budget or reduce it by 3 to 5%. And we are prepared to do that. I don't know when Tiffany might tell you this, but I'll tell you this as a result of my conversations with her, is there's a court reporter, a line item that has a value, 50,000+, and then we had made an additional ask, so that was for a judicial assistant. We respect that what the position of the county is relative to budget for 2024, and we don't want to pursue that judicial assistant position, and we think pulling those court reporter funds meets your ask of the 3 to 5%.
Judge, may I?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, with your approval. I just want to be clear.
Sure.
I'm not aware of this board ever formally asking for a 3% reduction. I haven't supported it. I don't support it. I don't think that's the way you go about managing and adjusting budgets. That may have been the wish of others, but to my knowledge, this board, which is 2 or more commissioners, has ever made that decision or made that requirement. I don't support the 3%. Thanks.
Okay.
Can Mr. Gonzalez weigh in on this? Because I
Of
think
course, this is
from
your
what
meeting,
you've
so-
heard or what was sent out and where we're at today, it's changed.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's not something that I know our office proposed, nor have I discussed with Tim Anderson throughout the budget process. I know I've had some discussions with Sheriff Raymond in terms of this situation. So Sheriff, and I know it comes to a staffing issue. Would you be willing to weigh in? Because I know we talked a little bit about pulling some of that money for what's currently happening, because you're going to have to plug the gaps with your sheriff's deputies and corrections officers. So I know you had a plan in place based on some of the numbers that you saw, but that's primarily the discussion that I had. But we haven't conversated as a board nor in our auditor's office throughout the budget discussions eliminating the bailiff's positions, in terms of the budgeting process.
So I'm probably being a little preventative here, I guess, and maybe it could be also called premature. It's really just to say, gosh, this is, I don't know timing-wise how to handle it, because I know you're working on what you're working on, and then we're working on our negotiations. So it's, I just wanted to share some more information then.
Okay.
Okay. And so, in light of all of the work you're doing relative to your budget, understanding what the sheriff had asked for, understanding his needs, understanding courtroom security and so forth, we have some slides. But really, I think from a 30,000-foot view, what we want you to know is that there was a backlog. You know that. We're working through that backlog. We're doing a good job. I don't want to just toot my own horn, but we're working hard to do that. And I think the numbers reflect that, okay? The bailiffs have a key role in that, and let me explain why I think that's true. They're a front line for the court in the courtroom, and even without a gun or a taser, all right, they are working with litigants, interpreters, attorneys, and others to ensure that questions are answered and that they're guided to the right space and place. They also ensure that we have trials that go out. So one of our slides here is for this year, and it shows you for Franklin County and Benton County, the jury trials we got out, all right? They, appreciating that there's safety and security that's necessary, the bailiffs ensure we don't have mistrials. We can't have, the nature of how this beautiful courthouse is designed, people are coming up this set of stairs to courtroom 2, and our jury room is nearby. And so our bailiffs are key to ensuring that they don't meet, because that can compromise our trials. What does that translate to? It translates to more backlog, more expense for everybody. Timely access to justice would be implicated very significantly if they are not there to help. We don't have anyone else trained or available to do it. Asking someone else to do this job that we currently have will impact negatively our court operations. So I'm just wanting to share, as I say, just some information that you may not be aware of. I see them as collaborative partners with the sheriff relative to understanding what the sheriff's capacities are currently. They are still able to identify security issues in the courtroom and facilitate having those resolved in an effective way that protects the folks who come to the courthouse. And we're thankful for that collaboration. Can we go to some other slides? These are just showing you some active cases. Speaks to the idea that we have completed this year of the filings, January to September of 2023, we had almost 7,000 filings. We've completed almost half of those. That's a great number. That's good. That's what you want to see. And then you can see through it from 2018 to 2021, active cases, 2022 cases, and you total cases. We have completed 85, almost 8,600 cases since October of 2022, okay? That's good. That's what you want to hear. Can we always do better? I suppose so. We certainly always try. But I will defer to Judge Ruff. There is an additional slide that she's going to cover. I'm happy to field more questions, though, if you have any.
Is there any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us. I am Judge Ruff. I don't know that I've had the opportunity to meet all of you in person, but I'm happy to be here today. I wanted to maybe put an extra emphasis so that you understand why our bailiffs are so important to us in continuing the role that they play, separate and apart from the security issue that I know you're already well familiar with. What you might not be as familiar with is what else are they doing to assist us, especially with this backlog and timely access to justice and meaningful access to justice. Our bailiffs perform a number of roles that are very separate from the security aspect, but I echo what Judge Shea Brown said, that even just having their presence in the courtroom is an assistance to the sheriff, because just having them there, having a seamless flow of cases, and having their sort of calming presence is invaluable to us and to our community, because it means that our dockets can be handled efficiently, people can get their matter heard, get in and out, and they're not dealing with inefficiencies and longer dockets and maybe some more increased security issues in our courtrooms, which would require us to stop court, have the judicial officer and staff leave, have a response. That could make a 1-hour docket turn into a 4-hour docket. And that's time that our community members are just sitting, waiting for their case to be heard, rather than be in and out of court on a civil matter, on a divorce matter. They might be there all afternoon, which is time wasted. So our bailiffs serve other important functions. What Judge Shea Brown was talking about with the difficulty, the extreme difficulty we would have in getting jury trials out is really because our bailiffs are our experts in conducting and securing our jury. So from the moment people are coming in on Monday mornings, checking in, our jurors are the ones who are fielding all the questions and giving the correct answers, the answers that don't disqualify someone or taint the whole jury pool. They are providing direction. They're doing every trial. You'd think that we'd have this down. Every trial's the same, but that's not the case. There's always these issues moving parties and in custody defendants from one courtroom to another without letting the jury know that someone is in custody. Our bailiffs know how to do all of this. We do not have other staff who are trained to do this. If we were to lose our people who know how to do this, and we had to pull someone from court administration to perform this job, we really run the risk of not only mistrials, because they may be communicating something that they're not supposed to, and they didn't know they weren't supposed to say that. They may be allowing these run-ins between parties, witnesses, defendants, corrections staff, and jurors. That would be a mistrial. But more importantly, when we have to take another staff member who already has a full-time job that they're performing for our community and put them onto a trial, that could be a 2-week trial where we no longer have a case manager or an administrator doing their job. So we have emails going unanswered, we have special sets going unfilled, we have scheduling requests that are not being attended to, we have attorneys with issues who need responses, and all of that would have to shut down so that one jury trial could get out. We always want to prioritize jury trials because we are very proud of the work that we've done to clear this backlog. But if we don't have our bailiffs who've been doing this job, who know how to do this job well, and we have to pull in a new staff person, it's going to very much shut down the remainder of the operations. Jury trials are not all that we do. They're incredibly important, but so much of the work that we do for our community is civil in nature. It's nothing that involves courtroom security. And so we just wanted to express that to you so you understand the crucial role that they play for us, very separate and apart from the security role that they'd previously done. They have so much more value to us and to our communities to keep us running smoothly. Because we've had these smooth operations, we've been able to set more non-jury trials for people who just want to get divorced. We've been able to set way more fact findings to move our dependency backlog through. So we used to have a huge dependency backlog, kids in foster care. The parents have a right to a trial, and we've been able to move those through. We've cleared so many of these backlogs because our judicial officers, our staff are able to work together to get those set. If I don't have a case manager answering those emails, working on that scheduling because they're doing a jury trial for 2 weeks, it's going to have huge ripple effects, and we will not continue to provide those services in a timely manner or allow access to justice really in anything except for criminal jury trials. And we've worked so hard at all the civil backlog. So I just want to express to you how important it is that we continue to be able to keep our train moving smoothly and efficiently to clear this backlog that I think the numbers show we've really really done a fantastic job of clearing. And it's not just the criminal side that we are thinking of. We have the vast majority of attorneys, the vast majority of filings are civil in nature, and we need to keep those moving as well. So I just want to make sure that you understand that workload that we have them do and how important it is to our continuing functioning here in Franklin County.
Questions?
So I understand the need and the workload of the bailiffs. So by taking the security portion away, is that going to reduce their workload?
So I don't know how much I can talk about that because, as you know, there's ongoing negotiations with the union. We don't expect to ask that they have a reduced workload, but this, you know, the same. I don't know how much I can talk about that.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
So, Carly Navis here, we're finishing up the job duty description that is being revised for those union negotiations to be shared with the union. And there will be additional duties that we think will bring them up to full-time work that fills the gap that was security.
And before you leave,
Sure.
there will be no need for a commission card then to be presented because they're not packing anymore.
Right.
The sheriff will have no
Right.
say on
Yes.
the bailiffs. Okay, all right.
Did that answer your
That's
question?
just my question.
And
Am
we
I
can-
correct in saying that Benton and Franklin counties are the only court system in the state of Washington where there is armed security?
It was, but not anymore. It's December 1st it ended. So their firearms got turned in on the 30th of November with their tasers.
But the other counties and throughout the state do not have armed security?
Armed bailiffs. I think that Commander Connor talked about this last week.
I'm just trying to get
And that
clarification because it
there
sounds
is
like it's
armed security in
additional
courtrooms.
$500,000 cost to the county.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mess up your record.
That's all right.
What was your question?
I said it appears that to take the firearms away from the bailiffs and to provide that extra security, with the only difference I see is the bailiffs won't be carrying firearms. And if other court systems throughout the state do not have armed security in the courtroom, I guess I'd like to know what the justification is for asking us to spend $500,000 for armed security in the courtroom if none of the other counties are providing that? Or am I incorrect in that
So I
statement?
don't want to quote numbers I don't have.
Okay.
My general understanding is there is armed security in some of the courtrooms in the state. Exactly which ones I don't know, but I could get you that information. And I'm happy to supplement the record with the job description when we have it officially shared with the union. So you can have that, so you can see comparatively what was before and what is being proposed now. And then Tiffany was going to say something about it as well.
I just wanted to say, most counties use their sheriff's department for the armed security portion, but on top of that, the courts still have bailiffs for all of the functions that the judges have been explaining to you, because there are other needs in the courtroom besides, you know, like they were saying, it's not the security. The bailiffs in other counties are to perform courtroom functions, not the security. We just kind of combined them. Instead of putting it on the sheriff, we knew we had this courtroom functions that needed to be taken care of. Let's have you do security as well to save money overall type of. So that's how that ended up.
So Judge, you made a passing comment, and I'm not sure I caught it entirely, but it was with respect to the bailiffs, and it sounded like you were saying that if they were no longer providing the armed security, that somehow that might free up some time and that other duties would be assigned to them to make sure that that time was fully utilized. So 2 questions. I'm not clear how the concurrent roles of carrying a firearm and conducting your bailiff duties, how that's a time savings to no longer be carrying a firearm. So that would be question 1. And question 2 is, these other duties that will be added to the bailiffs, who's doing those now, or are those unmet needs?
Well, I feel like I'm constrained by the union negotiations, so I don't feel very comfortable
that's good.
handling that. Apologize, but I can provide that probably Monday, if
Just-
that's all right with you.
It's not even something I have to. It was more amusing and wondering, so often we find that there are unmet duties, things that we'd like to have our staff doing, things that provide a qualitative improvement in terms of how, say, the courts flow and how the agendas move. And the only time we hear about those is at budget or when we're assigning them to somebody because we took something else away. So I'm just trying to have a better understanding of that, but it's not really something I need follow-up on. I think there's a couple people in the room I can go touch base with.
Okay, and then you had the other question.
Well, really, it was just the combination of the two. Is the absence of the duty to carry a firearm going to relieve any of the bailiff's time? How does that give them any additional time to do other duties?
From our perspective, it does, which is what is driving our request for the
Okay.
discussion on the job duties.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I understand that carrying a firearm in that role is not simply a matter of
Right.
bringing your firearm to work. There's a whole lot behind that, and that takes time and money.
And I'm not law enforcement, but with all due respect, I'll step into a little bit of my own observations, which is you're on alert, right? You're always, at all times, you're on alert, and that's what we are grateful for. Go ahead.
If there were no other questions for me, I'll give the time back to Judge Shea Brown. Thank you very much.
I'm good, thanks.
I did want to say that the clerks that we work with do such a great job in both counties, and we are grateful for their work. One of the things that they need to do is they have set job duties that we duly respect in the courtroom. And some of the things occasionally that comes up is they get bothered by folks coming and asking them questions, which isn't really their job at all. And so that's in part what the bailiffs help us with too, is ensuring that the clerks get to do and focus on their job, which is very important, and essentially try to intervene as best possible. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way, but that is, again, one of their big roles too. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Okay, Judge Peterson, did you have anything else? Thank you for your patience.
Thank you for this opportunity. Let me just say, the thought of not having a bailiff in a courtroom scares me to death. I'm going to tell you why. Because whether they're armed or not, they are a personality presence. They move paperwork. Well, anybody can move paperwork. Well, I'm not going to ask Mr. Stovern to take the document he just signed over to defense counsel table, lean over to a defendant that he just prosecuted and say, please sign here. The bailiffs do that. When people start getting antsy, their presence, just the fact of standing there wearing a suit says to the courtroom, they're in control, calm down, and just having that presence. The sheriff's office can't provide that. They provide security, but they don't provide the movement of paperwork, the movement of people, the staging of people. When you hear Judge Ruff talk about you can't see the defendant in shackles, you come up to the top of the stairs here where the jurors are at, and corrections is bringing the bailiffs from across the hallway in front of the clerk's office. If they see them in shackles, we start over. That simple, that easy. And so the role that the bailiffs play is much more than having a gun or a taser. It's much more than that. We appreciate that we have law enforcement in there now, but their job is not, and it's not gonna be, facilitating the movement of people, the maintaining of calmness in the courtroom, and that's what they do. And so I just wanna, please consider that. Thank you.
I guess the question I have, and I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes or question the security, and I definitely see the need for the bailiffs. I truly do. And I think they're an integral part of the courtroom. I guess my question is, you're only taking away their taser and their firearm. Are there any other non-lethal weapons or ways that they can secure the courtroom that doesn't require the additional presence of the sheriff's department? Just a simple question. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm asking because I want to know what the answer
Well,
is.
that's actually what started the mess in the first place, is the bailiffs were failing to rise to training standards, et cetera, for tasers and guns and all those type of things. And then, of course, it became an issue. And at some point, the judicial branch said, no, we'll just allow our bailiffs to carry guns. We have the authority. And of course, they presented to you earlier the reasons why they were going away from that. But let me clarify a few things before I'm the one that said it'd probably cost around $500,000 to stand up 4 deputy positions to do courthouse security, which is my responsibility. As it's my responsibility to protect the judges while they're in session, those type of issues. These folks didn't. I never said, look at a 3 to 5% cut. That come from Mike Gonzalez's office asking us to explore and look at what does a 3 to 5% budget cut look like. When we told you we believe it would take a lieutenant, 3 deputies to run courthouse security, and that includes in the courtrooms, this would be the costs. So where we're at today is, and I'll give you a real life example. Tiffany was going back and forth asking for armed security in the courtroom for CPOs, which is protective orders hearings. Marcus and the undersheriff didn't have people to bring off the road to do that. So I watched it go, and I'm going, well, eventually one of the judicial officers will get a hold of me and ask the right questions, and that was Judge Rodriguez that did that and said, Sheriff, I'm concerned about the courtroom safety and my safety during the CPO's hearings because they're contentious. We didn't have the manpower. All kinds of various sundry things took place, and I worked it. Stood up there, worked it until we can figure this problem out. I'm not pleased that the judicial just dropped it like a bombshell on me to have to figure out. But in the end, it is going to be financial. It's either going to be an overtime or, some RCWs that I provided you with, and so on and so on. But I have no play with what you do with the court's money or those type of issues, nor the cuts you're going to make or considering to make, et cetera, et cetera. It's just you're playing with an entire judicial system under an umbrella of an executive enforcement type of position. So Mike's correct. Mike, I don't think you sent anything anywhere to.
No, I didn't.
It was an exploratory look and see what a 3 to 5% budget cut across the board for everybody looks like. And each one of our departments, our elected offices, 3 to 5% can be pretty impactful, and then it has a downward effect from there. So the judges didn't ask to cough up the $5 million. Or $500,000. I actually presented that to you, and we also offered alternatives for you to consider.
Chair, may I ask a few
Yes,
questions of the
Mr.
sheriff? Thank you. Sheriff, we've talked about the issue a little bit, and I mean, yesterday you forwarded me the email from Tiffany, and I think it's a prime example of the fiscal impact that it's already having. I mean, you were gracious enough to step in. We've talked a little bit about the bailiff situation. You have the discretion to not allow them in our courtrooms, correct?
No.
So, I just wanted to make that clear that you can.
I don't have that discretion.
Yeah, so
I have the discretion of who I place in that courtroom,
And I
then
just
the
wanted to make that
authority.
clear because
Or what
some
bargaining
people have
group.
asked me that, is your intent to keep bailiffs out? Because your intent is to continue to use them, correct?
Look, the courts are, I'm not using bailiffs. The courts are using bailiffs.
Okay, I just wanted to put that on the record because I've heard.
Perhaps maybe saying administrative court assistants might be helpful.
Well,
Something that doesn't separate that, because traditionally bailiffs across this country, actually since the beginning of law enforcement times, have been considered law enforcement officers.
And if I may
Traditionally.
clean this up a little bit, it was for them to carry a firearm, he had to
Right.
give them a commission card, and they're not getting the proper training, so he pulled the cards.
Right, so they won't, and I wanted to put that on the record because some people, that they're not providing security any longer. But the implication of that is, and the fiscal impact is, your office will have to provide armed security because clearly there's a want and desire to do that by the judges. I mean, yesterday was a perfect example.
Correct.
So, and there's going to be no cost sharing in
RCW
that.
and corrections, I have the responsibility of protecting the judicial branch of the government. In other words, the judge sitting on the bench, that's my responsibility.
Right, and you brought forward our previous meeting, the fiscal impacts at $500,000. Have you discussed with Benton County of cost sharing in that measure, or is that something that's not even a possibility?
Nope. The sheriff is, if my understanding, the sheriff is Benton County has made other arrangements. You'd have to bring Sheriff Croskrey over for that one. But I know he's pulled his commissions.
Right, okay, and that's all I had,
I
Sheriff.
know that they're actually providing deputies in their court systems to protect them.
Thanks for the clarity.
I just have one other question, and I'm only asking because I have constituents that ask me. And is it the intent to put sheriff's department in all the courtrooms? Or is, I mean, I realize nobody has a crystal ball to see what's going to transpire with certain cases, but are certain situations going to elevate the need for armed security? And with the guard shack at the courthouse screening everybody that comes in, I mean, are there possibilities of closing the guard shack to respond to that situation? Or is there situations where the judge can just simply request, hey, I think this could be very contentious, I want armed security for this particular court?
Well, you're talking about two different topics. So the security that was put out in place was for the courts, so that individuals coming in visiting the courts, we, for lack of better words, searched them and made sure they didn't have guns. And so that's the first defense, weapons, those type of things. And then any altercations that would occur would probably occur, and they do occur, outside of the actual courtrooms and outside of the front of the juries. So that's been a long-standing thing that's evolved over the years. I took it from, why don't we put corrections deputies in the security building, being they do some of the functions of security in the courts. For example, yesterday, packed preliminary hearings in the courtrooms, and we had corrections deputies there. Then there was a medical episode that occurred in there. The bailiff, the terminology of bailiff, had to clear the court, the whole courtroom out, basically lock it down so they could deal with the medical emergency. It was the sheriff's office that coordinated people coming out of the court. It was the sheriff's office that stood by and provided security in the hallways and inside the court, and it was the sheriff that made sure medical could get in and out, those type of things. So there's differing roles that are taking place here. But at the end of the day, the law enforcement authority is the sheriff, and his responsibility, if you took a deep dive, is to protect the judicial bench, whatever the means may be. And we've always done that. We haven't done that in protective order hearings and those type of things. The bailiffs have done that, but that's no longer an option anymore. So when I get a call from a judge that says, hey, man, I don't feel comfortable, Sheriff, standing or sitting behind the bench in this courtroom, then I'm going to fulfill my obligations and make sure that occurs. Now it becomes your obligation to pay for the costs of that. And so I think that as we go through this process, as if we talk back and forth, there's probably going to be a good resolution to it in one way or another. I think what the judicial bench did was a good decision. But then they also don't get to control who I put in the courtroom with security. So, yeah, that hopefully that answers your question.
And with the Pasco Training Center now, will that lessen the cost of putting your sheriff deputies in the courtroom?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. You're talking about a state certification is the reason why there is.
But that state certification is required for your deputies to be in the courtroom, correct? And can that be done?
Well, it's required for them to have a state certification, yes, if that's, yeah.
And is that
mandatory training and those type of
mandatory training? Could it be done here in Pasco now?
Right. That saves the county money. That saves the county money with traveling costs, lodging costs, feeding costs, all those type of things. But the county still pays for that deputy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully at a reduced cost and housing somebody and
yeah, I could
putting them
break
in
down
all
the
that.
financial numbers for you and show you that. Same as if we'd start a corrections academy here, which is 2 months for them in order to get the state certifications. So yeah, there's cost savings there. But try not to get confused. There's a difference between a sheriff and a bailiff. But traditionally over the years, the sheriff has provided commissions, training, and all those issues for bailiffs in order to try to save costs. But that's not what's going to occur now. Now we have to figure out how to support both costs.
So the topic keeps coming up that we're the only 2 counties that have armed security in the courtroom. My question is, what do the other counties do throughout the state of Washington?
So the sheriff's offices across the state provide security in the courtrooms. The sheriff has the authority to issue the credentials in order to do that security, and there's multiple ways to do it. Here, which is developing out in Benton County, is sheriff's deputies are going to do that. Cowlitz County, for example, the sheriff hires part-time retired cops and reactivates their commissions so that they can do the security work in the courtrooms. But once that's put in the control of the sheriff, then you have to go by the sheriff's rules, not the judicial rules, respectfully. And so it just depends on what county you're in and how the sheriff handles that. For right now, for us, we're having to handle it with the resources we have. And I'm going to tell you that if you look at history and attacks that have taken place in courthouses across this state and those type of issues in the courtrooms, moving individuals back and forth out of the courtrooms, some of them are quite gruesome. And most of the time where those have taken place is because of lack of security, armed security in the courthouses. So it's a problem. We'll fix it. We'll figure out how to fix it. But what was presented to you was, let us have one new deputy position while we're trying to figure this out so we could have that person available. And then we would supplement that person with our road deputies and other ways if it's not within his work time or he's not available. So that's what was presented is here's the $150,000 option or here's a $500,000 option that we could begin to explore. Both which are financially in your hands. But make no mistake about it, that somewhere along the line, we're going to have to either pay overtime, or I'm going to have to make decisions. Am I going to remove deputies from the road in order to fulfill my obligations to the courts? You know, those are the questions, and I know the answers to most of them. All I'm trying to do in the meantime is take care of the collateral damage for the decision that was made. And I didn't have I had no idea they were doing that until it happened. And so I'm just trying to react to that, which is I'm going to provide security to the judicial bench. It's going to happen.
Well, I don't think
one
anybody's
way or
asking
another.
you not to.
Yeah. And
I just
so,
want the answers.
Yeah, but I have to choose wisely when I'm going to do that, and I'm going to try to do it in the best interest of public safety.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Try to make these a little quicker. Bailiffs used to be part of the law enforcement function. Statutory change from the state has taken away the firearm piece of that, but they still provide a measure of security. We've covered all this. But they never worked for you, the bailiffs. So because this has always been a requirement of your office by your own description, you've really been benefiting from the fiscal largesse of the courts, who have been paying for this function that really belonged to the sheriff's office. And we're simply saying that now that they're not able to provide that service, irrespective of who pays for it,
Right.
it falls back in your lap.
That's right.
And so while it's not technically an unfunded mandate from the state, because it's always been a requirement of your position, just been picked up by somebody else, the bottom line, and I'm looking for a head nod that, yeah, you agree, or I'm off track, but bottom line is this is not an optional service, and it's not one that realistically can be fulfilled in your professional judgment by our roving security person in the courthouse. It has to be a in-court presence. So we good with all that?
I am. Two different geographical
Right.
issues.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So bottom line, you have to provide the service. The courts want it, and we need to pay for it. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Some
Yes.
clarification there. In terms of the statutory underpinnings of what we're talking about here, we have RCW 232-330, which refers to criers and bailiffs, and it essentially says that Superior Court judges have the power to appoint a crier and as many bailiffs as may be necessary to, what does it say? As may be necessary for the orderly and expeditious dispatch of the business of the court. And so that law has been in effect since 1891, hasn't changed. There's no definition of what a bailiff is or what the duties of the bailiff might be in that law. Then you go to 3628.010. This is general duties of the sheriff. Subparagraph 5 indicates the sheriff shall attend sessions of the courts of record held in the county, which obviously Superior Court is a court of record, and obey the court's lawful orders and directions. So that's sort of where these two statutes intersect. And I guess the question is, can the bailiff be the same person? Could they be a sheriff's deputy and the bailiff appointed by the court? Potentially, but I think given the duties of the bailiffs, which we're not going to talk about, but those might not be coterminous with the duties of the sheriff's office. It seems like they might not be the same person. It might be more, and we were certainly an outlier in terms of our county having essentially the same person doing that function. We had the security and the bailiff functions all in one. Historically, that might have been the case, though. But I think times have changed, as you pointed out, Commissioner Peck. So.
It's presumed that the sheriff's authorities can be delegated. They obviously don't expect the sheriff, so it can be his deputies and such.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
yesterday was a perfect example of collaboration of 3 different security roles in the courtroom. Security and armed security, they're both security, they're just different roles. So yesterday was my docket, it was crowded, and we had a bench full of in-custodies. So I've got corrections officers up there doing what they do great. They control them. Their job is to control them. Their job is not to protect the people, the judge, the staff, the clerk's office, is to control them. Person goes down with medical emergency, happens to be related to somebody who's getting ready to change a plea. So now we've got the bench of the people sitting here. One starts getting excited, oh my gosh, that's my family member. Others are like, oh my gosh, that's our family member. We've got corrections there controlling that, doing an excellent job of that. I've got a bailiff over here who the bailiff stands, they stand by the judge and they facilitate moving people and paperwork. And that person, Casey, he goes out to help. We happen to be lucky enough, we had Commander Connors, he's in the courtroom as well. He happened to be in there as well. So we've got him able to address the medical needs of the person. Casey we have to get everybody out of the courtroom. Because if you're going to do an attack in the courtroom, you're going to create a diversion. You don't just walk in swinging a gun. You create a diversion. And so while this diversion is being created, Commander's on it. Casey's getting everybody out of the courtroom. They all had very different roles, and every single role was essential to security and the safety of the people in the courtroom. And so we appreciate that the roles are different. They are different. And please don't confuse armed security with security. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I know this is lengthier than I anticipated. Thank you for tolerating the length of it. One example of the role of a bailiff not related to using that firearm or taser they no longer have is with some folks who are have some mental health issues that come into our courts, okay? And so I can think of one specific instance or person that would come to court. It would be difficult for that person in court because of their issues. And that bailiff, one particular bailiff, was able to be helpful in bringing that person, at least calming them and assuring them that their business would be handled, that the court was going to do it, they would be heard. I certainly did my best to assure that person when they were in front of me as well. But those are things that are invaluable and not necessarily per se definable. I just wanted you to know that. Thank you.
No, thank you for your comments. And again, the security is of the utmost importance. So.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
And we appreciate the explanation of the bailiff, and we know that you came today because of that 3% to 5% budget cut, so that's not pertaining anymore.
Okay.
We're in the mix of balancing our budget, and that's not on the table, so.
Well, thank you for your hard work.
Rest assured.
Appreciate it very much and your time today. Thank you. It's
Thank
very
you.
important to us. Thank you.
All righty. So with that, we'll move down to Franklin County items. And at this time, I'd like to call up our assessor, Mr. Rosenoff, to please explain the first Franklin County Commissioner's levy certification on behalf of Mesa, Washington. So enlighten the public of what's transpiring here, which we did last year.
So last year, Mesa did not levy. They did not get in time their meetings to be able to set their budget requests to the commissioners or to the assessor's office. That was the same thing that has occurred this year. The taxing districts are required to have to the commissioner's office, and they send our office a copy by close of November 30th. That didn't happen again this year. So it restricts, and I issued a letter to the county commissioners giving them the RCW that allows them to levy on behalf of the city of Mesa. They are restricted to the amount that I put in the letter, which is $62,998, which was the same restricted amount as last year, which was the same amount as the year before. So they are not entitled to the 1% increase nor new construction. They have to hold to the last year in which they did levy. So what's before the commissioners now is a letter that has all the taxing districts levied budget amounts. And so should the commissioners choose to levy for MESA, all they have to do is simply, and I believe it's probably the last thing on your agenda, the letter to my office. You vote on that letter, of course, you pass that, and then the chairman can sign it. That'll come to my office, and that gives my office the ability to levy that amount for MESA and the other taxing districts of which the commissioners would be certifying to my office. So I guess it would be item number 1 and actually item number 5 that you would be doing on there. So I don't know if you have any questions. I'll certainly attempt to answer them for you. This is just our office attempting to assist the commissioner's office and staff in getting this information to you correctly.
Yeah, I passed that letter down so everybody has a chance to look at it. Is there any questions?
And it's the same as last year's letter, just with different dates.
Yep.
And this is taking effect because their lack of
My understanding is, and I haven't been able to personally speak with them, my staff has, but my understanding is, you know, they've got a new mayor, they got a new clerk, they got new people in there that just do not understand or know the process, and we have worked on extending that knowledge to them, but then their city council would have to meet, they have to do it within, you know, a 2-week notice, and then get the information back to us, and they apparently were not able to meet that need. But they certainly still have the need for their budget monies, their tax levy amounts, or they won't be able to function. So
they're aware of the cutoff date for next year.
They are, and we tried to communicate that ahead of time, and we've certainly will continue to do so. But a lot of it's an education part, which they have certain statutory obligations on their own to do.
Sure.
And we try to go above and beyond. That's why we're even attempting to bring this before the board so that you can levy for them.
All right, thank you.
So I'm just now seeing these, John. The item 7, the Educational Service District 123, all 5 of those, Clovis, North Franklin, Othello, Pasco, and Star School Districts are all listed for information only. Could you give me just a little more clarity as to why that is and why we have estimates for the others?
You're talking about on the right-hand side of that letter?
Yep.
They submit that for information purposes as to what they're doing. They have certain abilities as a school district. However, that's wording that your clerk has always used. That doesn't come from my office. The same as the others where they're saying estimated. So here's whether it says for information or estimated, if you approve those, they come to my office. We then verify what they legally are allowed to have, and they're going to get the lesser of what they're legally allowed or what they put down. Right. Correct. We're the guardian for all the taxpayers, believe it or not, to make sure that no taxing district over levies, and we will not allow them to do so. So almost every one of those numbers before you are probably slightly inflated, primarily because they didn't know what the state utility amounts were yet. Those are just coming out. And so we'll just make sure that they cannot exceed that amount that they've put down on there, and in most cases, they'll get slightly less.
And on the current expense ordinance / resolution 346, it says dollar amount of the increase over the actual levy amount from the previous year shall be, it has the dollar amount, it says which is a percentage increase of 1.3% from the previous year. And that's the next sentence that caught me by surprise. This increase is exclusive of additional revenue resulting from new construction, improvements to property, newly constructed wind turbines, solar, biomass, geothermal, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, we all talk about our 1% cap. Sometimes we have a little bit of banked capacity. What is the additional 0.34 above the 1% cap?
That would be your banked.
That's the banked,
It
okay.
is, that is the only amount, and it has to be listed by a dollar amount and then by a percentage, and it will only be the 1% max plus any bank that you choose to use.
And folks not familiar with the term, we're allowed to take 1% more on the property tax, raw dollars, than we did the previous year, not counting new construction, et cetera. So for every 100 we got last year, this year we could get 101. But in the years when we don't take that full 1%, we can set it aside or bank it. And so our bank is pretty small. It's down to 0.34, but we're using all of it. So going forward, we have no more banked capacity. I know you know this, but it's not something that gets talked about enough, so I wanted to put it on the record.
If they really look at percentage numbers also, Commissioner, is, let's say that you or any of the other taxing districts choose not to even use the 1%, nor even use all of their lawful max, they can levy for a lesser amount, and then they even have more banked that they could use at a later time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. No more questions for now.
All right, so is there there is no resolution number with that? This is just.
It would just be a motion and a vote for that certification to my office, and then a signature to my office.
So there are multiple resolutions in this packet with resolution numbers.
Those are resolutions that would be what you choose to do for your 1% banked, those things, you have to decide what you're going to do. Certainly, if you have a question on them, I can answer those, but those are totally in your purview.
So you're looking for a motion for the Franklin County Commissioners to levy on behalf of MESA, and you're looking for the taxing district's letter to assessor.
The number
1 and 5.
Yeah, and actually, if you do number 5, it covers number 1.
Okay. So
because it's listed on that sheet.
This came from you?
That actually is put together by your clerk.
Okay. Maybe you want to just take a quick peek at that. Just. Okay. Well, then if you've seen it and you're comfortable with it, yeah, I'm thinking about number 5, and that there are resolutions in there, or at least one.
Yeah, and it says estimated, it has the RCW on there.
Okay.
We did provide this information to your clerk.
So that covers,
Put this form together.
so that covers number 1, the levy certification?
And it covers number 5 also.
Okay, but it
This
does
is
cover.
actually number 5.
It does 1 and 5, though.
Correct.
Okay.
That one letter will do number 1 and number 5.
So we don't need action on 1 separately. We can just take care of 5, and there's a resolution in
Yes.
here with a number on it.
Yeah, the other resolutions that are on there, you can take up now and sign. You can do it this afternoon, should you choose to, with the budget stuff. It will not change your budget. Your budget can still go on and have a budget hearing this afternoon and pass your budget. This part of it on those other items specifically deal with what you are signing, directing my office to be able to levy on behalf of the road department, on behalf of your general. So the other letter, number 5, that was out there, your numbers are in there. However, I still have to have those other sheets for your levying signed for the county to get their money. Because we already have those sheets signed by all of the other entities other than MESA, who you're levying for on item number 5. Hopefully that's semi-clear.
Looking for a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 2023-345 in reference to the taxing district's letter to the assessor.
Okay, that's item number 3. We're just looking for the approval of the taxing district's letter to the assessor, correct?
Just that front page there, Commissioner, that was right in front of you, which is number 5. Then you'll end up having to do number 2 and number 3 and, and others.
And number 4, see, we have a resolution for number 2 and number 3, but number 4 does not have a resolution for the
Does not have a
veterans?
resolution, however, it requires the commissioners to vote on it and pass it and sign it.
Okay.
Look at that again.
So these are simply if you want the veterans to get money.
Yes.
I think
But
the
you might-
question,
you
I think
might
the
take
question,
it-
John, is about
Yes, sir.
exactly which document needs to go first. And
Yes.
the very first one on top is the taxing letter that's got a resolution with it.
What number is that one or that resolution?
There is no resolution, but I think you're just wanting the motion to, you're just.
This first one
the-
would be the 2024
Yes.
taxes levied by taxing district boards. Approval for this letter to be given to my office for setting
Yes.
of the levies. So that just is a motion.
So it might be appropriate to rescind the motion on the table and remake it.
The motion died because of because it did not get seconded, so go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to do that one, then I can certainly walk you through the others. But this first one is independent of anything else on this
Right.
sheet.
Move for board approval of forwarding the 2024 taxes levied by taxing districts board's letter, therein being the title, to the assessor.
Second.
There's been a motion, a second, to send the taxing levied by taxing districts to the assessor. And there is a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we move down to levy certification, current expense, Resolution 2023-346. That's 345. Okay, but we're trying to get this right, because this resolution is ahead of 346 is ahead of 345 on our resolution chart. So we're going to go to 3, which is levy certification, Franklin County Road Department. Resolution 2023-345 needs to be in the motion, and that's number 3.
Does that work for you, John?
I'm sorry?
Does that work for you, what you need?
As long as we
Yeah,
get through them
because
all.
that simply is your levying for the road department to
Yep.
be able to get their monies. You can do it in any order you want there.
Well, that's just the order that this packet's in.
Yeah. And those are not our resolutions. We just simply tried to help your office and.
Say do 3 next.
Move for approve of Resolution 2023-345 in reference to the levy certification, Franklin County Road Department.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-345, levy certification, Franklin County Road Department. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Next, we'll move down to Resolution 2023-346, which is the levy certification current expense. Item number 2.
Move for approve of Resolution 2023-346, levy certification of current expense.
Second, discussion, like see the document again, please.
There's been a motion and a second for levy certification on current expense with discussion. Resolution 2023-346. Pass that down to Commissioner Peck, please.
And John, the .34, as far as you know, that's the full banked, right?
That is full banked and your 1% on that one,
Okay.
correct?
Thanks. No further questions.
There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-346, levy certification current expense. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Next is Veterans Assistant Fund Property Tax Levy Letter. Just looking for a motion to approve it.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Been a motion and a second for the Veterans Assistance Fund Property Tax Levy Letter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. John, we'll get these signed up and get it back to you in just a
Yep.
second.
Then we can, give them to your clerk. She can get them down to our office, and then, yes, then you can have your money for your budget. That's
Next,
what that's for.
yes.
You're
Next,
requesting it, and we'll then make it happen for you.
thank you, John. Next, we'll move down to Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thanks, Chair. Really not much to add. Just working on the budget. I mean, that's taken up most of our time. So hopefully we're coming to the finish line, and we can come to a conclusion. Just to let the public know, we've got the budget hearing, which starts right around 1 o'clock, and we'll go to 3, 4, 5, infinity if we need to. So that's all I've got, Chair.
Commissioner Peck.
Budget meetings, field inquiries from employees and constituents on the budgets. Other than that, not much. That's about it.
Commissioner Mullen.
So last week had the Benton Franklin Health Department meeting, budget meetings, and lots of phone calls about the budgeting process and concerns from the employees. That's it.
My last week consisted of the Eastern Washington Council of Governments, which was a very informative meeting with all the other Eastern Washington County governments. Had an agenda meeting on Monday, and then budget meetings all week long here. So pretty short week there as far as meetings go. Next, we'll move down to elected department head business. Is there any elected or department heads that would like to come forward?
I guess I get another one. I've got a letter to hand out to you, Commissioners. I emailed it to all of you early this morning. It's just simply something that can be discussed in the budget hearings today. If you have a question of it here right now, you can, but I will be in the budget hearings to be able to answer those questions on there. Might give you a little more clear picture and maybe a little attitude on some budget monies on my request on there. So, and I'll be glad to answer any questions there on that. I do want to, if I can, address Mrs. Hatch's, LaWanda's call earlier. As an elected conservative individual and following the United States and the state constitution, of which I took an oath to both, what I am doing and what our office is doing in no way is contrary to the United States Constitution nor the state constitution. And if I was to not do this job, I would be in violation of both the federal and the state constitution, even though people don't like it. And the judges haven't ruled any different. If they would, I could enforce it differently. And commissioners, you control the taxation of this county as far as budgets, not me. I control what the assessed values are statutorily according to the state RCWs. And I might add, I think property tax is probably the oldest tax that we've had in this country. I don't like any of them, but we're going to have to operate on something. So we do our best to make sure it's fair, that it's equitable, and that we are following the law. And to be honest with you, most people that don't like what we're doing don't like it because we're following the law. And I contend that I will continue to do so. I'm not going to violate my oath. If it is contrary to the United States Supreme Court or the state Supreme Court or Constitution or the United States Constitution, man, the courts ought to get busy and rule on it because I don't have that authority. And I'd gladly follow a judicial order that was contrary to some of it if it had validity, believe me. So I just thought I'd make that statement.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other department or electeds?
Briefly, Commissioners, we have a criminal justice treatment fund, comes from the state. Currently, we have the Greater Columbia Behavioral Health Organization administering that, and then the money flows through to a local substance use disorder treatment center, Merit. A couple of months ago, they asked if we would like to, the state asked if we would like to manage that ourselves. We have looked into doing that. There's a lot of reporting that we don't have a person in-house to do that would need to be done. The state is asking for confirmation from the legislative body of the county whether or not we intend to have Greater Columbia Behavioral Health continue to manage it into the next year. And they feel like we've said we want to manage it and we want them to manage it. They would like to make sure that it's coming from the authority, which is this board. I know Mr. Gonzalez has worked on it. It might be something we can manage ourselves in the future, but we don't currently have anyone to do that. So I would like direction as to whether or not we attempt to manage this ourselves immediately, or if we continue running this through the Greater Columbia Behavioral Health Organization.
Questions? I have a couple. How much are we talking about here funds-wise?
I believe it's approximately $14,000 or $15,000 a month. It's used
A month?
A month.
And can the salary of the person managing it be brought out of that fund?
I don't believe that Greater Columbia Behavioral Health takes any administrative cut out of that.
Okay. But is it permissible?
I don't think so. I think they are mostly a pass-through, and then any administrative costs are mostly incurred by Merit because there's a lot of reporting requirements.
Okay.
And I think that would be true whether we administer it or not.
Right. Questions, commissioners?
What is your recommendation?
I believe until we stand up our own Human Services Department in Franklin County, we don't have anyone in-house who can do this work right now. So at the moment, to prevent a break in services for people in Franklin County going to Merit as part of, for example, our drug court, it's a potential they'll not be allowed to participate in drug court if we don't leave it with the Greater Columbia Behavioral Health. In the long term, obviously, we should do it ourselves. But in the short term, I don't want to see an interruption of services.
All right, thank you.
What did you say the cost was?
I don't know the exact numbers. The numbers I've been told are between $14,000 and $15,000 a month. This is a state fund that they are distributing based on population to the counties.
Right. CGTA money, right?
Yes, the
Okay.
criminal justice treatment.
Treatment account, right. So that number is what's flowing in from the state, or is that what you're saying Greater Columbia Behavioral Health is being paid to manage this?
As I understand it, that's coming in from the state, and then they are redirecting 100% of that money to Merit for services.
So Greater Columbia is not taking anything for the cost of administering? Because they have to account for it and pass it through. I mean, Commissioner Mullen is on that board. Maybe he can give us more insight into that process, but.
I can double check that, but that is what I was told, but I can double check that.
Yeah,
The administrative fees 10% on the grant. Yes, you could take that as long as you put the things in place. And what's taking place right now is our corrections facility is going to be taking over all drug testing for the district court, which is a part of the grant. And eventually, we can take that money. We just have to put the framework in place. Require whoever is the board member on DCHB to say, yep, we're done. We're going to take that money and we're in process. send those samples out to be tested with the results, and we're going to have to county keep track of those records. Administrative fees in the long run to pay for it. If that makes sense. So for now, Merritt gets the administrative fees.
Mhm.
We're gonna do the work, and Judge Orozco is gonna figure out how to. Better words.
Yeah.
You can't say that. I can't.
But-
Work around that.
But Judge Orozco, whoever they put in, is going to be responsible for the reporting back to the state how we're using this, correct?
She has a court administrator, she has an administrator that she's hired to start doing it.
And
Okay.
Chair, if you don't mind, thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Gonzalez.
So yeah, and this is a multi-layered issue. So it starts out with the Healthcare Authority, which is a state agency. They give the money to GCBH, Greater Columbia Behavioral Health. It's a pass-through essentially, and they're the accountability function. So there's basically an office called Merit, and they provide SUD services, which is substance use disorder testing, which is a vital part of the therapeutic court. So I met with Alyssa Pierce, the district court administrator, on Tuesday, and you know what happened is, yes, we asked to administer the funds, but the reporting element is quite extensive. So Alyssa thought, perhaps this was too much at this point to do this. So the impasse right now is we're essentially retracting what we wanted to do. So a gentleman emailed me yesterday and said, well, I want board authority to make sure that we want to move forward. And, and I repined, you guys helped us unravel this. So, administratively, I hope we can do this, but I think it's a good measure to come in front of the board. But I wanted to give you where we're at, because the importance of getting this fast-tracked is the therapeutic court is now held up with substance use disorder testing. Judge Orozco is ready to go. The problem really is just the reporting element, because Merit does a tremendous amount of activity, in terms of reporting. So they're at an impasse. So Merit, quite frankly, is a little upset with us that we stopped it. So, they're not getting funding. We have the funds. The reporting elements are probably too much for us at this point. And Daniel's 100% correct. Until we have a human services department that can manage this 100% of the time. So anyhow, I wanted to kind of give you some perspective of what because it's a multi-layered thing and what it's doing is it's holding up our therapeutic court from starting.
Okay. So you're looking for us for?
I would ask just an up or down if the board would like to manage this as a county, or if we would like Greater Columbia Behavioral Health to continue managing it, which is what we have been doing up until this point.
Greater Columbia is doing it for free, has done it for free for a long time, and nearly flawlessly, as I recall from their audits. The 10% that the service provider Merit takes is what's on the table, and I don't see how, unless we administer those services the same as Merit is, I don't know how we get access to that 10%. Creating a human services function that would allow us to do that is a long ways off and very expensive. Do you have any more insight as to specifically what services Merit is providing? Actual testing, I think you alluded to.
They do actual testing. They also, so we have a number of people participating in the drug court, the joint drug court at the Superior Court level currently, and it will cover their treatment.
And so that 10% they're getting for providing those services.
Well, they're getting all of the money. They're
Right,
allowed to use part of it.
But 10% of it can go to the administrative overhead. What I'm getting to is I don't see an opportunity for Franklin County, whether we have a human services function or not, or whether we use our bi-county human services. Excuse me, I don't see an opportunity for us to take hold of those funds unless we're going to provide those same services that Merit is.
I would agree entirely. The only wrinkle is that if you are the one administering it, whether you get an administrative cut or not, you have more oversight into where the money's being spent. And I know especially Judge Orozco was concerned that perhaps all of our money was getting mixed together with Benton County's money, because they do the same thing for Benton County, and then being spent without anyone checking to make sure that we're getting our cut of that.
Okay. My understanding is that state law requires those monies to be earmarked and fenced by county. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. I say just leave it where it is, at least for now.
I would consent the same.
Okay, yep. For now.
Thank you. For now.
All right, any other elected or department heads?
Commissioner or Chairman, permission
Yes.
to speak.
Yes, Commissioner Mullin.
So concerning the rest of the month with commissioner meetings, I am, for the record, not not in favor of canceling the meetings. I think that if there's business that needs to be done, that is our duty to continue with the meetings as scheduled at the beginning of the year. So unless I am in the minority, that is my thoughts on the commissioner meetings for the rest of the month. And then also, I would like to say thank you to our prosecutor's office for being able to attend the meetings. When we switched to Wednesdays, this has been a very beneficial help, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez? you want-
In totally respect Commissioner Mullen's perspective, we have closed out all business for the year, and really I was taking Pasco's lead, and you know, my colleagues over there, who they closed out all business on Monday night, and they won't have any other meetings for the rest of the year. I think it gives the staff an opportunity to take a breath and just, you know, reset. But kudos to Jennifer, who's just been really a rock star, getting everybody round up and getting all ASRs in, and, you know, making sure business is closed out. So I want the public to rest assured that we're not leaving anything off the table. Department heads and elected officials were incredible, you know, really closing out the year, and I think it was really received well by staff to say, oh man, that's great, because people have vacations, it's the holiday season, it's Christmas time, so you know, morale-wise, I think it was received well, Commissioner, you know, from that perspective. So, but and we do have the option also for a special meeting, if need be, you know, special meetings. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you can only make a actual decision on one item for a special meeting.
No, that's not
So,
true.
That's an emergency meeting, as we
Okay.
learned.
Right. it'd have to
Okay,
be-
yeah. I wanted to
Special meeting
clarify.
just requires 24 hours notice, and then you can only take action on the items that are on the
Okay.
agenda that's posted 24. So unlike a regular meeting, you can't just amend the agenda and then take
Right.
action
Yeah.
on an item.
Thank you. I wanted to put that on the record. I didn't want the public to think we're hiding anything or anything like that. We're trying to give the staff a break and you know, close out the year as quickly as we can.
So if it is an emergency meeting, it's not limited to just one item. Is that correct?
It is.
Well, yeah.
Well, typically it would be, because unless you have a lot of fires to put out, there'd typically just be one emergency issue that you're dealing with. So I think you're right. It could be more than one issue, but due to the nature and the limitations of when and how you can have an emergency meeting, they're typically just about one item that, you know, constitutes the emergency that's declared.
As opposed to a special meeting, which 24 hours notice, multiple topics, but they have to be on the published agenda.
Right. That is also accurate, although typically I think special meetings as well are usually very limited in the number of agenda items.
Thanks.
And I would just like to note that our clerk of the board is out on maternity leave, and our interim clerk of the board is going to be gone next week, so it'd be tough to have a meeting without a clerk of the board. And as chairman of the board, it is hard for me, because in my 5 years as commissioner, I have not missed a meeting yet. And it's this would be the first meeting that I would miss. So yeah, it's weighing hard on me too, but it is this time of year and people will be traveling, and we're already up against it here this next meeting. And we have looked into calling meetings if we need them for business, so it won't be that we're out of touch, but we can call for a meeting if we need be, and we can schedule it.
And Chair, Jennifer's been gracious. She's got a staycation going on, so, you know, she said she would make herself available, you know, if necessary.
Right.
So yeah, I think we've got that element covered, but again, I just wanted to give our staff and elected officials the opportunity to take a breath and kind of hit the reset button, because clearly we have a lot going on in 2024, that's for sure.
I don't believe in having meetings for the sake of having meetings, but I also don't believe that we can go 3 weeks in this county without having something that demands attention, with the understanding that we're essentially on call for emergency or special meetings if there's an issue, but I would certainly hope and expect that nothing gets delayed simply because we want to avoid having meetings. So if there's some business that comes up and we have a commitment from staff that they'll call a meeting, then I can go with the majority, but only really because I hate meetings for the sake of meetings. Thanks. Although I will miss them, to be clear.
Mr. Auditor Beaton.
And just from the auditor's standpoint, we've done this 13 years. We've never done this. We have, maybe canceled a meeting if there's the board issue or something like that. But we're going into the end of the year. There's always stuff that emerges. It's your call. It doesn't get my vote. There's a lot that goes on here. Things emerge. You can plan on at least one special meeting, or if you need to cancel one meeting, I get that. But I guess I don't know, I'm a little bit shocked in that we just, take the rest of the year. Government doesn't take time off. So we're the ones that have to process the payroll, and emerging stuff will come up at the end of the year. You may have to pay out of a fund. Stuff comes up at the end of every year. Maybe the city has the luxury of closing out, but in talking with my staff, it's like, you're going to be coming in, signing stuff anyway, the rest of the year. So, like I said, I could see canceling the next one, but maybe, anyway, I just have not seen it, and it catches me a little off guard that we would just take the rest of the year off. So, anyway, that's the auditor's 2 cents.
And Chair, I will say from the resolution from this past Wednesday's does set us up pretty good for the auditor. So they're able to do warrants and payroll. So that's all been taken care of as well. So.
Well, at this time, we will cancel next week, which is the 13th, because we won't have a clerk to work but we might want to leave the 20th on the schedule just in case, and the 27th. We can always, if there's nothing that comes up, we can always cancel them.
Yeah, we could certainly play it by ear, Chair, and
yeah.
It's obviously your guys'
I
decision.
know you might be traveling later in the month
Yeah,
too, so.
We've got a lot of staff that are traveling, and
Yeah.
it's just, again, it's that time of year where, but I've made sure that my direct reports, they have someone in command if they're on vacation. So they've provided me that information. So it will be business as usual. And again, we've got those provisions of special meetings and things of that nature where you can have multiple agenda items. And so I don't, hope if something comes up, we're here to take care of it. So, I'll be in the state of Washington, so I know I'll be here, so.
All right. So with that, we'll move down to public comment. Is there anybody in the room for public comment, or nobody on the phone? Anybody in the room? No public comment. Administration office business?
No, sir.
So if there's no other business, any other business for the good of the county?
I believe we have a need for an executive.
Oh, yes, sir. I forgot about that.
4230, 110, 1I, potential litigation. Was there Any other need? No.
How much time do you expect that to take?
10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chair, while they're clearing the room, I'm going to take a brief break. I'll be right
Okay, we'll
back.
take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 11:55. right, we are back from recess, and would you please take us into executive session?
Certainly, Chair. We're going into executive session under RCW 4230, 110, 1I to discuss potential litigation.
And this is for 10 minutes, so we'll be entering in executive session at 11:59. We'll be out at 12:09. Might want to open the door. Yeah, got to wait for the door to be opened. We are out of executive session, back to regular session. Is there any other business for the good of the county?
Unfortunately, I would ask that we do 5 more minutes. That was not even the issue I needed to address. It was an important issue, but not.
But the same
RCW.
Same RCW, we're going to extend for 5 more minutes.
And this is the one I need to leave for, right?
Yeah, yes, please. Thank
So
you.
we'll recess it. We'll recess into executive session at 12:11. We'll be out at 12:16. We have come out of executive session, and do we need to extend?
As of now, I do not have a yes or no, so I would need to extend 5 more minutes, please.
Okay, we will recess into executive session for another 5 minutes at 2:18. We'll be out at 2:23. All right, we are out of executive session. We're back to regular session. Is there any other business for the good of the county?
No, sir, we are through.
Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.